Hello, everyone out there, and thanks for spending some time meeting with us here at Greenshades today. We are here to talk about seasonality. Quick introduction, my name is Steve Smith. I am the manager of strategic accounts here at Greenshades. Been with the organization for a few years and been in the industry for 25 plus, and I'm chatting with you from my home office in lovely New Orleans, Louisiana. So we've got some great content for you today. I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. All right, so as we said, the topic for today is optimizing payroll and HR for that peak hiring season, seasonal workforce mastery. Okay, so what's our objective today? We'd like to come away with a few things. So first of all, we'll begin by talking about some of the key challenges and evolving trends just around seasonal employment. What are we seeing in the marketplace today? What's happening and what's going on? And then we'll transition from that and we'll talk about exploring strategies to effectively manage your seasonal workforce. Speak to some of those challenges that just came up in the poll question, for example. And then we'll work to identify some solutions that can simplify your overall seasonal payroll and HR operations. Sounds good? Let's get started. So let's talk about the future of seasonal work and workforce agility. What do we see coming down the road? What are the trends? This is what we see broadly in terms of seasonal workforce trends for 2025. First, we're seeing intensified competition, but not in the way you might think. What we're seeing is actual job seeker interest in seasonal roles is at its highest in years, along with fewer opportunities. So it's a more competitive hiring landscape, but not for the employer, the employee. So that's good news for those of us who need to find this talent and bring them on board to manage our seasonal operations. In addition to that, we're seeing a rise in staggered hiring. So there are major employers that are spreading out seasonal hiring rather than just concentrating it in the traditional holiday season. As you can see, retail remains the dominant driver for seasonality. In late 24, 66% of all seasonal job postings were in retail. And in fact, as you can see, that's up 8 percentage points from the year prior and a full 4 percentage points above pre-pandemic levels. So retail is still driving the bus here. And then finally, we're seeing distribution roles grow. So seasonal hiring expanding beyond stores into logistics and fulfillment. So for an example here, Amazon hiring 250,000 in seasonal staff for fulfillment and transport. So those are some of the 4 broad trends that we're seeing in the seasonal market today. So now let's talk about some of the challenges and the impacts on seasonal workforce management. So the first is compliance risk growing. We're simply seeing rising pressure to meet wage and hour laws, predictive scheduling rules, and proper classification. We know that those things can vary widely from state to state, and it's important for organizations to stay on top of them. And we'll talk more about that later. Second, and you all mentioned this in the poll question, training and onboarding time crunch. Companies are certainly talking about how difficult it is to onboard and train short-term staff effectively within limited windows. You've got your normal processes that work well with your permanent employees, and then suddenly you have to scale those into a seasonal environment, and that creates challenge. We are seeing some cautious optimism in hiring. The unemployment rate rose to 4.1% in February. While it did go up, it's only 1/10 of a percentage point from the 4.0% in January 2025. You can see wage growth slowed 4% year over year, signaling mixed economic confidence. Also, we added 155,000 jobs in February 2025. And then finally, administrative overload during peak. So when you've got high volumes of seasonal I-9s, work permits, you've got payroll fluctuations, all those things adding to back office complexity because of the surge in activities around seasonal hiring and managing those seasonal employees. So what are some workforce solutions to help you stay ahead? What are some best practices and things you can think about? So here are what we're seeing people do in the seasonal market. First, flexible payment options and on-demand pay. So this obviously gives workers instant access to their earned wages. It is a boost for retention and job satisfaction. It's a tool you can use to help try to retain those seasonal employees through the entire time that you need them there. So very important, certainly something worth considering. Enhanced data security and compliance. We're seeing folks take steps to strengthen payroll protections with encryption, with multi-factor authentication, and by automating compliance tracking. We're also seeing a reliance on employee self-service portals. So the idea is to empower these seasonal employees with easy access to pay, tax forms, and schedules. It reduces the overall HR workload. And in addition to that, surveys tell us employees actually prefer to get their information this way. We're seeing a preference for cloud-based payroll solutions, where you can improve your efficiency with real-time updates, can leverage remote accessibility and seamless integration with your HR tools. So just a way to make everything within that environment run better and more efficiently. And then, of course, we're seeing a need for compliance with evolving regulations. This will be a common theme, but it's important to stay ahead of changing labor laws and tax policies with automated compliance solutions. Okay, so let's dig in a little more to that onboarding and that offboarding question for seasonal employees. So we like to think of this in terms of a structured onboarding experience. So it goes beyond paperwork, it builds confidence and connection, and it improves organizational productivity. So as best practices, we like to think of personalized onboarding experience, the ability to configure resource and workloads based on job function or department or experience level so that you can give the differential and personalized onboarding experience that those employees need to give them the best possible outcome. And of course, it's about more than paperwork. Onboarding is the first opportunity to connect new hires to your mission, your values, and workplace expectations. It is the first way that you can impress your company culture onto these new employees. And as a best practice, the idea is to simplify the onboarding journey with a concise, technology-driven approach that reduces friction and accelerates productivity, which is critical to every business. So the more you invest to get this first step right, the more positive outputs you're going to receive on the back end. Let's look at the other side, offboarding and rehiring seasonal workers. So structure in this process not only reduces your hiring costs, but it helps you ensure all important compliance. It helps improve employee satisfaction, and it helps manage seasonal transitions. So critical to employee compliance and final paychecks. Your structured offboarding process has to enable you to verify final wage payments that align with state laws, including, for example, unused PTO payouts if required. As a best practice, we always recommend you conduct exit interviews. It is the perfect opportunity to learn and gather feedback so you can improve your strategies going forward. Third, of course, the maintenance of accurate records. Properly document those terminations and updates in payroll and HR systems, again, to ensure compliance. And then finally, another best practice is to stay connected. So keep those high-performing seasonal workers engaged. You can use newsletters or talent pools for your future hiring needs. After all, if they were great for you this year, you'd love to see them again next year. Okay, now we'll move into discussing a little bit around managing fluctuating hours and dynamic pay. Those come with the territory when we're talking about seasonal employees. As you can see, seasonal hiring can bring varied pay types. So you can deal with hourly wages, shift differentials, overtime, bonus. As a best practice, configuring payroll codes up front makes it easier to handle these dynamic pay types. So to the best extent you can, eliminate manual errors and automate your pay calculations. That helps make sure that you can deliver accurate and timely pay. Second, support for unlimited pay codes. This will allow you to easily manage multiple pay types for seasonal, part-time, and full-time staff. And then finally, just overall improve payroll flexibility. The more flexible your payroll processes are and the more flexible your payroll technology is, the more you're able to adapt very quickly to workforce changes without disrupting payroll operations. It just makes sense. Another seasonality issue is the management of schedules. During busy seasons, you've got to navigate varying worker availability, shift preferences, and overlapping PTO, while again, ensuring compliance with local and federal labor laws. So as a best practice, scheduling applications can help you handle those complex needs. One thing that's extremely popular in survey results is giving employees the ability to swap shifts so that they can manage their shifts effectively and be more productive. Also, the best scheduling solutions allow PTO to reflect on those employee schedules. They automate compliance for complex work shifts, and they can help you identify departments and locations where employees are. So overall, making sure that your processes and your technology in this area are sound and strong is a key to help you scale into seasonality. Now, in terms of managing those dynamic pay systems and schedules with ease, the in-house flexibility includes, as you can see, things like termination pay, off-cycle payments, real-time payroll adjustments, multiple payroll batches, schedules. So all these things happening at once. So again, this returns us to the theme of a flexible payroll system. If you feel good about the technology you're using, you can adapt to those seasonal demands while again making sure everybody gets paid. So let's talk a little bit more about compliance during this busy season. All of this is familiar to us all. We have to deal with it every day in terms of managing it for our permanent employees. So we're talking about documentation and forms, things like I-9, W-4, and state forms, as you can see. We always have to worry about data security and privacy, safeguarding sensitive employee information. Of course, E-Verify, we need to confirm new hires' work authorizations in the US. So we've got to maintain compliance with federal hiring laws and avoid potential fines or legal issues. And then finally, ensuring you're collecting job-specific certifications and licenses and managing and tracking the expiration of those items. Again, these are all things that apply to our permanent employees, but I think the critical part to think about is, are your systems adapted to work at scale so that when you're dealing with surging employment during a seasonality event, do you have the systems capable to manage the higher volume of all these compliance concerns? Some other things to consider relative to compliance. Employee classification, correctly assessing whether workers are employees or contractors. And that's really important. We're going to turn to that in more detail in the next slide. Obviously, overall adherence to FLSA guidelines. Monitor overtime, minimum wage, and more. And then, of course, year end. Have year-end forms ready for seasonal workers. All that is part of seasonal compliance. Okay, employee or contractor. How to tell if a worker is one or the other. What are the key considerations? So the factors usually fall into three main categories. The first of those is behavioral control. So employees, typically their employer has the right to control what tasks are performed, how they're executed. That includes specifying work hours, location, tools used, provided detailed instructions on how the work should be done. Whereas independent contractors maintain control typically over how their work is performed. They typically decide their own hours, use their own tools, and focus on delivering results rather than adhering to detailed instructions. Number two, financial control. For an employee, the employer controls financial aspects such as payment schedules, reimbursement of expenses, the provision of tools and supplies. Employees generally rely on the business for steady income. Contractors, on the other hand, often have independent businesses and are paid based on agreed upon terms for specific projects. They may incur their own expenses and are not financially dependent on a single business. And then third, type of relationship. Employees typically work under long-term arrangements, receive benefits like health insurance or paid leave, and perform tasks integral to the business's operations. Whereas contractors usually work on a temporary or project scale basis. They do not receive employee benefits and often perform services outside the core functions of the business. Additional concerns. Economic realities test. So under laws like the Fair Labor Standards Act, courts may evaluate whether the worker is economically dependent on the employer to determine employee status. Permanency. If a relationship is expected to continue indefinitely rather than being tied to a specific project, it suggests an employee relationship. And finally, specialized services. Contractors often provide specialized services requiring unique skills and certifications that are distinct from the regular business operations. So no single factor determines classification. Instead, businesses must consider all relevant aspects in each case. So misclassification can lead to legal consequences, including fines. So in complex cases, consulting legal or tax professionals is always recommended. Then, of course, there's PTO compliance. Although PTO is not federally mandated, there are laws and regulations that can vary based on location. The Family Medical Leave Act is, of course, a federal act, but then paid sick leave and jury duty laws, they can vary on a state-by-state basis. Paid time off payout laws also vary state by state. So it's really critical to understand those differing regulations depending upon where you're operating, where you're employing seasonal workers, particularly if you're employing them remotely, as is increasingly the case. Okay, so what we want to do now is just kind of share a real world story. We want to tell you a little bit about Parks and Marina Incorporated, a Greenshades customer. So they were facing challenges in managing seasonality and an expanding workforce. And they realized they had challenges and needed to adapt to the seasonal changes, and they needed a comprehensive solution. So they turned to us at Greenshades. What did they get out of it? So first, increased efficiency, reduced payroll overhead, saved them significant time. Secondly, they reduced manual entry via automation, reduced their administrative workload. They saved over half a day each pay period by empowering employees with self-service portals. And they were able to easily manage employees working across multiple EINs by transferring data. So net, they saved $50,000 a year for partnering with Greenshades. Well, in the event that you are looking for a change in payroll and evaluating new solutions, of course, we'd love it if you were to take a look at us at Greenshades. As you can see, we offer a full suite of payroll, HR, benefits, tax and compliance, and time and labor management. All of these items were developed by us and supported by us here at Greenshades every day. So we think we can be a great potential resource when and if you believe it's time for your payroll journey to change. So key takeaways, let's just summarize some of what we had here today. First, it's a best practice to leverage flexible cloud-based workforce solutions. So the idea is to meet those hiring challenges head on with tools built to handle dynamic schedules, varied pay types, self-service operations that empower employees to manage their own information. Second best practice, to make sure that you proactively and prudently structure onboarding and offboarding. Bring seasonal workers on board with a streamlined, intentional process that fits your business and sets them up for success. And then as the season ends, similarly, a consistent offboarding approach will help ensure smooth transitions and rehiring readiness. And then third and finally, of course, never overlook compliance. The fast pace of seasonal hiring events demands precision. So stay compliant by properly classifying workers, collecting required documentation, and managing paid leave in line with local and federal regulations. Thank you everyone for your time today. We've been thrilled to have you here. If you've got questions or would like to see anything more, please contact us today, either via email or visit us online at go.greenshades.com. Thanks everyone, and have a great afternoon.